So, Mr. Williams, please introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Mr. Williams. I am 27 years old, and I'm from the state of New Jersey.
So, Mr. Williams, how do you feel about the secession of the South from the United States? Do you even think this is a battle worth fighting for?
Absolutely not. I personally am against the succession, of course, because I'm fighting for the Union. But I feel as the reason they went ahead and did what they did because they kind of felt unheard. I mean, we're called the United States of America. We're united as one. I feel as if you just being able to up and leave from the nation is blasphemy.
You're right, right. And so, do you think that's justifiable to throw a bunch of men's lives down the drain in order to regain that southern territory to get them back into the United States?
Well, that's a hard question because no matter how you put it, lives shouldn't be lost for any reason. But I feel as if you're willing to fight hard enough for something, a few casualties is something that is just going to have to be done. But I think it's a horrible thing at the end of the day.
I agree. And what are your views on slavery?
My views on slavery, as I've stated before, I think it's a horrible thing. And you don't really people up north they don't really get to see what slavery's truly like. But as someone who's been to the South, not only for war, but like for just leisure reasons and other things as such, it truly is a horrible thing once you get to see it firsthand.
Hello, and thank you for listening to Behind Enemy Lines. I'm your host, Jackson Maasari. Today we'll be going back in time to the Civil War, specifically two of the most important battles, the Battle of Gettysburg and the Battle of Vicksburg. I will be asking tough questions to both the Union and Confederate soldiers to get better insight into both of their perspectives. We'll start off with Gettysburg. The Battle of Gettysburg took place on July 1st, 1863, and lasted 3 days. It took place in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and is most notorious for being the most deadly and the most northern battle of the Civil War, with an estimated 51,000 casualties. Early in the Civil War, the Confederacy won many small battles on its own soil. Confederate General Robert E. Lee was unsatisfied and wanted to win a battle on Union soil. He thought this would lower Union morale, lower the chances of Lincoln getting elected, and possibly reopen the possibility of foreign influence. On the first day of the battle, Confederate soldiers accidentally encountered Union soldiers a little west of Gettysburg, and as you can imagine, they instantly started fighting, and it escalated quickly. The Confederate soldiers pushed them back to a place called Cemetery Hill. Lee issued orders to try and take the Union flanks, and huge mini battles broke out and took place to try and defend these key strategic points. One of them was called Little Round Top, which was another hill, and there are others like Devil's End and the Wheat Field. Eventually, Lee got frustrated and launched a huge attack called Pickett's Charge, in which over 12,000 Confederate soldiers stormed across an open field. The Confederate soldiers got massacred by artillery and Union strikes. After this big loss, the Confederacy retreated, resulting in a Union victory. So, Mr. Williams, tell me about your experiences while in this war.
I mean, of course. So my job was, I was artilleryman. I was firing the cannons. I was just in that line of work. But really, it's as bad of an experience as you can possibly imagine, especially for me being an artilleryman. Because yeah, I could be a whole lot worse. It could be a whole lot worse. I know people who's lost their foot, lost their lives, lost their arms. Like people who will just never be the same again. But firsthand, I could tell you, being in the back, kind of in the back lines, and being able to see bodies dropping in front of your face, you know, and of course, since we're the biggest things out there, pretty much, you have shots firing at you constantly, just the constant whizzing past your face, and it was just, it was horrible seeing, bodies drop next to you and the loud firing back and forth. It was as bad as you could possibly imagine.
So, tell me a little bit about the morale of the Union soldiers at this point, because I know that previously to this battle, the Union had been taking many losses, and it may have seemed like the South was pushing more and more towards home. So, just tell me what it was like, in the barracks and stuff like that. Were people amped up, ready to fight, or were they kind of feeling low?
So pretty much what happened was, our kind of our system leaders, they tried hyping us up as much as possible, and you had some of the younger guys, really ready to go at it, and ready to fight. But some of the older guys, they looked like they knew what was going on, and they didn't really want to be there. But everybody's here fighting for a cause, and some of us not even wanting to be here, but are here anyways. But at the beginning, it was kind of mixed. But towards the end, even the younger guys, like at the end of my first battle, you see everybody's faces. It was horrible. Everybody looked real depressed and upset at what was going on. However, I was hopeful by the end of the night, because yes, those 12,000 men charging towards us, but it made it. And it's unfortunate I had to say this, but they really made it easy for us to win that battle. They were charging within an open field, so by the end of the night, there was a lot of casualties and it was hard to see. But I was hopeful for the victory. I was grateful for the victory.
So, Mr. Williams, do you have any sympathy with your enemy here? Do you have any sympathy with the Confederacy or the Southerners?
Technically, I'm not supposed to say yes, but I'd be lying to you if I told you no. I have family in the South that I know fights for the Confederacy. I'm, they're my family and I love them, but at the same time, we're both fighting for our causes, and I wish they didn't choose what they did at the end of the day. But yes, I show sympathy. I show sympathy sometimes, because I just think that every battle, every battle I've seen on the front lines, I know it's terrible. So I can't imagine what they go through on their day-to-day basis as well.
And have you noticed anybody else have these same kind of thoughts, but more radical? Like, have you noticed people refusing orders or people refusing to fight?
Before, when I knew I was going to go fight, there were people back in my town telling me how they would never fight for such a cause, and like how they would never fight for the Union nor the Confederacy. But in my barracks and within the family I built in the military, you don't really see people sympathizing, at least the way I do, towards anybody, or at least they just don't show it.
All right, Mr. Williams. So overall, how do you think that this battle affected you and the morale of your team?
I can say, for me personally, I probably won't ever be the same. I've been these few years just put me through a lot. And, it was horrible. But speaking for the rest of my troops and the rest of us, I can also say they probably won't ever live the same lives they used to. Um, war is truly horrible, and but we were all, like I said so many times before, we're all here, what a cause that we're willing to fight for. And I think that's the greatest part of it all. That's the one good thing that came out of this. Um, it really showed the unity through. And it's a little ironic too that it came off secession, but it showed the unity of the United States of America.
All right, Mr. Williams, thank you for your time. Now let's get the other side. We're going to go behind the enemy lines here and talk to Mr. James Baker, a Confederate soldier who also fought in the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, Mr. Baker, would you care to introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Mr. Baker, and I come from South Carolina.
All right, Mr. Baker. So why did you decide that the Confederate Army was right for you? Do you have any like slaves? Do you own slaves? Do you like slavery? Why did you join the Confederate Army?
So I do own slaves myself, actually, and I support the Confederate Army because the South, slavery is the backbone of our economy down here, and we need this economy to continue as a country. So I'm gonna support slavery and keep my slaves, and not gonna let the North stop me from doing this.
Okay. So, do you think owning slaves is morally correct?
That is a very good question, and yes, I do believe owning slaves is very morally right because where I come from, folks believe that slavery is a part of our way of life, and it's been passed down from the Constitution. It's justified by the Bible, and it is the foundation of our economy.
So, do you see slaves as people?
Um, well, yes, obviously they are people, but I believe that we should treat them as objects.
Or like animals, right?
Yes, because they're only here to do our labor, and they are not U.S. citizens. They did not come from the U.S.
Okay. So, tell me what like a typical day is like as a Confederate soldier. Like before war or anything like that. Like you're just sitting around.
Well, me personally, I had the job of an overseer, so I would make sure that the slaves were doing their work, and, um, I would have to make sure that they weren't trying to, like, connect with each other or learn how to read or write and such things.
Okay. So you're fighting for slavery, correct?
Yes, of course.
All right. So let's get into the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, what was your like role? What was your position in this battle?
I was also an artilleryman.
You were an artilleryman. Okay. And can you tell me like, well, first tell me a little bit about the leadership of Robert E. Lee. Like, what did you think about him?
Um, I think that man is an idiot, to be honest with you. I don't think he should have been the leader at all.
Okay, you don't like Robert E. Lee's leadership.
No, not
Hmm.
one bit.
Okay. Uh, so why did you hate Robert E. Lee's leadership so much?
The main reason is actually pretty simple. He lost us the Battle of Gettysburg by making us do Pickett's charge, just had all of our 12,000 soldiers just run through an open field, and there was just gunfire everywhere and bodies just flying. Like, literally, the Union was swatting us like flies. It was so easy for them to hit us because Robert Lee wanted us to charge a hill in an open field.
So yes, speaking of like your experiences with war, like what was your like firsthand experience with that whole thing? Do you have any like friends or family who's also lost their lives in this war?
Yeah, I do actually. I had a brother that was fighting in Gettysburg with me, and sadly, because of Pickett's charge, he did pass away, which is also another reason why I have a deep hatred for General Lee.
Were you wounded in the battle?
I was wounded, but since I was an artilleryman, I was pretty much protected. The only really wound I had was I was shot in the shoulder, but nothing really happened to me. I survived.
Okay, and are there any moments like that still stick with you even after the fighting? Like anything you'll think you'll never forget?
Yeah. Seeing my brother die was a pretty traumatic experience. I saw him get shot right in the face, right next to me.
Okay, okay, and are you hopeful that, or do you believe that the South will end up winning this war?
I believe if we replace General Lee, we do have a very good chance of winning this war. Because I think military-wise, we do beat the North.
Okay, and speaking of the North, how do you feel about like the Union? Do you still see them as kind of human? Like, do you still feel bad if you kill one, or are you kind of like desensitized and you view them as less than human now?
You know, I have no respect for them anymore since they are trying to take away our right to slavery and how they're gonna try to push us to get rid of our, like, everything we've done since the birth of this country.
Okay,
Yeah.
and lastly, Mr. Baker, I want to ask on how the Battle of Gettysburg has affected your team morale and has affected, or how you think it will affect the war effort as time will go on.
You know, it really did decrease our war effort because at first we were winning this battle, so we thought it was going to be an easy victory, but then ending up losing it in the end really did like decrease our morale by a lot. But we do still think we will win the Civil War.
All right, Mr. Baker, thank you for your time, and let's get on to the next segment. Okay, that was both perspectives on Gettysburg. We see that no matter the side of the conflict, war still takes its toll on both equally. Now we will move on to the next battle, the Battle of Vicksburg. The Battle of Vicksburg started on March 29th, 1863, and ended on July 4th, 1863. This was a northern offense deep in enemy lines. Vicksburg was a town that sat on top of a hill overlooking the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River was vital for supply routes and transportation. Capturing it meant cutting enemy supply chains off and effectively splitting the Confederacy. General Ulysses S. Grant didn't directly go for Vicksburg initially, but rather after towns surrounding it. Grant then tried to attack Vicksburg to no avail. After numerous attempts to try and break through the city's fortifications, Grant laid siege to the town, effectively cutting off their supply chains. This made the Southerners inside the walls have to live in brutal conditions. And after just 47 days of living like this, General Pemberton surrendered, giving the Union a major victory. Okay, here we have with us a Union soldier who was a part of the attack on Vicksburg. His name is Mr. Quincy. Mr. Quincy, please introduce yourself.
Um, Hello, how you doing? My name is Mr. Quincy. I'm from North Carolina, and I'm 33 years old.
So, Mr. Quincy, first and foremost, how do you feel about the leadership of Ulysses S. Grant?
That's really is a hard question. You know, him being, you know, my commander, my chief. I should speak highly on him, but truth of the matter is, the reality is, it seems like he has no regard for human life whatsoever. The way he treats us, the way it seems like we're just dispensable pieces in his game, and I don't think he understands that we're real humans, with valued lives. But yeah, that's what I think of him pretty much. Not the most caring individual.
Okay, okay. And how do you feel that he handled this attack on Vicksburg? Do you like the idea of laying a siege on it? Because I know for many, we had many assaults on the town, and you guys just couldn't get through. Many lost their lives. So do you think that was a good thing to do to put those people inside such horrible conditions to eventually get to surrender? Or do you think he should have went about it a different way?
No, you asked me, but and I say no. But the reality is, the truth of the matter, I'm not I'm not a commander for a reason. Could I tell you a better way to do it? No. But as a soldier, I know there are many better ways to do it. I feel as if there was too many lives lost, and we're the unit here. We weren't the ones who went through with the secession. Um, we have a completely formed government. We had a before set military. I feel like all these casualties are just they're unneeded. You know, all this fighting. I feel like there's better ways to go about things.
So, can you describe like how you felt when you were marching there, knowing the kind of conflict that could take place, knowing that you could be seeing your brothers or people or your friends or even yourself die in the most horrible way? How'd you feel walking there?
So the thing with Vicksburg is that was my first battle. Um, I joined the Union kind of late because I'm so close. I'm already so close to territory beyond the South and within the South. So I didn't really know where I lied or where I stood at completely. But when I joined the Union, Vicksburg was my first battle, and I have to say I didn't really know how to feel. I really felt like an emptiness towards the whole thing during our march up there, down there. It was yeah, no, I guess the best way I could describe it was like an empty feeling. Nothing really.
Do you
I
think that
really
was the
didn't feel
most
anything at all.
difficult like part of your campaign or of being down there?
How I felt.
Yeah, like that. You mentioned the an empty feeling. Do you think that was probably the most difficult part was the morale of the soldiers, or yeah?
I can tell you this. How I felt, really nothing. You could see it on everybody else's face that oh my gosh, here we go. You're killing. They gotta watch their brothers and everything, and everybody else. Go through torture and all this and death and all this other stuff. So you could tell the morale wasn't the best it could be. However, I don't think that really put an effect on me. So I don't think it was the worst part. I really think me feeling nothing was really better than me feeling what possibly everyone else was feeling at the time.
Okay, so what was life like on the outside of that siege? Like, what did you do from day to day? Were you constantly trying to get into the city, or were you constantly keeping people out, just like kind of starving them out until they surrendered?
Good question. To be honest with you, I'll be so honest with you. We didn't really get commands really. It was we set up for it right outside the town, and we kind of just sat there, and there wasn't any type of order, so I couldn't tell you exactly what we were doing, but the life was really just sitting and waiting. We were idle for a lot of time.
So why do you think you guys couldn't get into the city? Like, what defenses did they have set up that made it so difficult to really break in?
Well, I'll give you from my point of view, from through my eyes, it was more as if they were set up on a kind of like a they had high territory. Let's just say they were higher up, and I don't think that we wanted to spend as many soldiers as possible, especially after Gettysburg and everything. I feel like it was just better to hold things off. So I feel like we waited more than we really needed to. I don't think that was more of the fact that it was impenetrable.
So, Mr. Quincy, what was it like walking into the city after they had surrendered?
I would say it was really just a ghost town in there. I mean, it was a real eerie feeling all in all.
Yeah, and does that kind of like change how you felt towards them? Like, did you feel any sympathy after seeing the conditions that they were living in?
No.
Okay, okay. Um, we'll now move on to our Confederate side. We'll go behind enemy lines here and see what it was like living within the town of Vicksburg during the siege. All right, we're here with our Confederate soldier, Mr. Cornelius. Mr. Cornelius, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mr. Cornelius, and I come from Virginia.
You come from Virginia. All right, well, Mr. Cornelius, I'm familiar, or I know that you spent 47 days in Vicksburg with little to no supplies while there was a siege on your city. Tell me a little bit about how life was like inside of the walls.
Yeah, that was the most depressing time in my life. It was a horrible experience. Three people had to split one piece of bread for the entire day. We had no food. Our shoes were all cut up. Everyone was getting diseases. It was horrendous.
It was horrendous, but beforehand, it seemed like you guys were doing pretty well. I mean, you fended off one of the strongest armies with one of the strongest generals. I mean, how'd you guys go about keeping Ulysses S. Grant and his army from penetrating the walls of Vicksburg?
Mostly it was our utility usage, our cannons and such on the outside of the walls. We're keeping them away because they didn't really have like any cover to go behind. But eventually they realized that if they wait us out, we would run out of supplies, which then ended up making us lose this battle.
I mean, yeah, but how did you guys pretty much deal with that supplies? Do you ever see people eat like horses or rats or some things like that?
Yeah, there was definitely some cases where people were eating rats to survive. But yeah.
And what'd you guys do like for fun in there? How'd you guys pass the time?
Uh, there's absolutely nothing to do because we were always worried and kept on our toes about you guys at the north attacking. So we were always on guard, barely any sleep at night, and yeah.
So how'd you feel about your Pemberton, like his leadership during the siege? Do you guys think you should have like held out longer? You think you should have surrendered sooner? How do you feel about that?
I feel that General Pemberton actually played this role pretty well because at first we were actually defending the North, but I do think we could have surrendered a little bit earlier because we did lose multiple men from the lack of supplies. But I feel that General Pemberton was a good general, and if we had more supplies, we would have won.
All right, so how like were you guys? Did you guys have any hope at all that reinforcements would eventually come? Like what kept you guys going for so long?
Um, we did believe that reinforcements were coming, but then towards the end, when it was around like 40 days, we started losing almost all hope because we were waiting for 40 days and no one has came to our rescue, and we assumed that the North just like canceled all those routes and just destroyed everything.
So when you guys did eventually surrender, were you like? It had to be like a bittersweet moment where you were finally getting out of those conditions, but also you were going to have to deal with Union soldiers. So how did that feel to surrender the city? Were you like, or how were you treated by the Union soldiers afterwards?
I was happy to finally get out of Vicksburg, but it was really shameful having to surrender and not because I would rather die in battle than have to surrender. But that's just not how things went. And then when the Union soldiers did get to us, they treated us better than we were living in Vicksburg, but they didn't treat us well.
All right, and do you believe that it was worth all that hardship and sacrifice to keep that city of Vicksburg under Confederate rule?
Yeah, no, it was definitely worth fighting for because of the Mississippi River. That was a make or break in this war. But we did eventually lose it, sadly. But I do think the fight was worth it, even though we did lose.
We're gonna conclude our episode. So we've seen different sides of the story for both Confederate and Union soldiers on Gettysburg and Vicksburg, and we've seen both that they both shared similar experiences in terms of war, and we've seen how that's affected them. Thank you for listening. This was your host, Jackson Maasari, and this was Behind Enemy Lines.